Welcome to the Imperfect Dads podcast.
I'm Justin.
And I'm Devin.
We believe dads care deeply about their family and kids,
but they don't always have a space to discuss what their life looks like.
Our podcast is a space for dads to discuss the ups and downs of fatherhood
and how they feel like they're holding it all together.
Or how they're not.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. On this episode, we have on Josiah Holland. We talked about raising twins, the issues him and his wife had with fertility and miscarriages before having the twins, his transition from musician to being a teacher, making sure kids develop their own identity, discussing Richard Rohr and Greg Boyle, and Josiah's belief in humanity. And also just like one more thing.
Dad, just start the episode.
Oh, my bad. So I do have to tell you how I remembered, because we had messaged back and forth on Instagram before, just about life and stuff. And how I remembered to reach out to you was I was back in town like a month or two ago getting my hair cut by Stephen Mason.
Yes.
And I had asked him like, hey, you seem like this would affect you. Did David Lynch dying affect you at all? And he was like, not really. But my friend Josiah was a really big David Lynch fan. And he seemed to be more affected by it than I was. And then I was like, Josiah, I need to have him. Like a year ago, I was like, hey, let's get you on the podcast. And then just forgot to follow up. So,
oh my God, everything is connected back to David Lynch, I believe.
Which feels very David Lynchian also to some extent.
We can't escape it. He's the architect.
He's the architect of all things.
Yeah.
Well, how many kids do you have and how old are they?
So we have two children. They're twins. They're 8 years old. We have a boy and a girl named Naomi and Quinn. So yeah, they're great. We love it.
How does it feel to be so efficient with having children? I mean, like some people are like, I want to have one of each gender, and you and your wife are just like, you know what? Let's just be pregnant once. This just one time.
Well, to be transparent, this is a big part of our story that we share because I think it's not talked about enough. And not to get real serious real quick, but that's kind of who I am. We had a journey, right? Like, so we've been married 15 years now, and we were both, I don't know, maybe normal aged by today's standards, but older by my parents' generation standards. I was 28 and she was 31. And at that point, we were like, let's have kids, like we're already like edging towards the early to mid 30s. And so we started trying immediately and had a really hard time. And we had 3 miscarriages, and it was a really sad journey for a while. And then we were kind of at the end of trying all these different interventions, and we kind of had some moments where it was like, maybe it's just us. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe that's our life. Maybe that's, what our future or whatever you want to call it looks like. And then we thought we were miscarrying for a 4th time and went to an appointment, and they were like, oh, you got twins. So it was a really pleasant surprise, but always really scary. The whole journey was kind of devastating at times and careful. And we cried for years, I will say. And I feel like when they were finally born, there's all the emotion around the birth. And then after that, it just felt like kind of this new season of joy. So we had a hard time getting to where we are, but then you have twins, which is great. And then you have a boy and a girl. So you feel like you're really winning the jackpot, so to speak. So, but yeah, we've got, and we're good. Like we've had the 2 and we're good. So
yeah. I think fertility is such a fascinating journey because you have such limited control over it. Like and it puts so much it's hard to describe the stress that you're put under whenever you're trying to get pregnant, to have a miscarriage, and then that entire journey it really shakes you from what people have told me, that it's one in which you are just kind of like broken because all of your desire to have a child is filled with so much love and so many good intentions, and to have it not work out hurts.
I didn't know how existential the journey of having children was. I thought it was a pretty simple part of life, and as you grow old, you realize how complicated everything is. Marriage, relationships, all your family dynamics, your family of origin, your extended family, and then having children. And then as you go through, if and when people go through what we did, it immediately becomes, why are we having children anyway? What's the purpose? What, existentially, like, is it good to have children? Is the world in such a shape that I would want to bring children into it? Does that matter or not? And then when it doesn't happen easily, or even if it does get tough, then what then? So what does it mean about the meaning of all things? And what does it mean about the biological part, the psychological part, and the spiritual part, and all those things wrapped in? And so I kind of had this several different ways of thinking, and it became pretty depressive for me. I would say my wife held out so much more hope throughout the whole thing than I did, but to where, what if we didn't have a happy ending? We had a happy ending, but what if we didn't? And
Yep.
what does that mean? And how do you still find peace in your life without a happy ending in a pursuit? So anyways, that was a huge part of it. So
Yeah.
being a father is it feels like the most, not to use some overused words, but the most blessed thing I've ever done, and the most righteous thing I've ever done. And certainly the thing that I still feel the most excited about, you know.
Yeah. I think I like Frank Turner a lot. I don't know if you've ever listened to him.
Frank Turner.
Yeah, he has a lyric that's just remember this is your past if you survive. And I feel like it just always makes me laugh to think about it because whenever you're going through a hardship, everyone goes through hardships. And in the
Right.
moment, people are like, you'll look back at this and laugh one day. And my thought is always like, no, I'm not trying to be too pessimistic, but like, if I survive this.
Easy for you to say, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Easy
Don't
for you
I
to
like
say.
I know there's a light here somewhere. I just don't want to find it yet. So sit with me in the darkness for a little bit. I'll come around to
Yeah.
the light. It'll be okay.
Yeah.
That those moments always make me a little bit angered whenever you go through a hardship and someone's like, you'll laugh at this one day, and you'll be like, not laughing right now.
Yeah.
So
Or and people say things, and I know I haven't been through immense grief like some have, but
yes.
people say such things that come from such a kind place
Hmm.
and can be really hard to hear anyway. So really it's just the presence of, people that matters. But yeah, I don't know. For us, the thing I counted as joy is that we have our children, and they're really precious. So
Yeah.
yeah.
How steep of a learning curve did it feel like to go from never knowing if you're going to get pregnant to having your wife birth twins? Because that's quite a different mind shift.
Right. Well, we always say we don't know what it was like to have one, so having two it's just our reality.
Yeah,
I
that's
also
true.
feel
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
we had kind of done enough inner work and relational work, whether knowingly or not, to be prepared for it. So when the day came, we were like ready to hit the ground running. We had kind of
Hmm.
sculpted our lives and even our jobs and home in such a way to have kids. So I think, you know, we, the single life in Nashville is so fascinating. You could probably have a whole other podcast about that. Maybe there are
Probably,
some,
yes.
but
Yeah.
like going from living that kind of life and that kind of paradigm to coupling and then also creating a home, which are not the same things, and being really careful about how and who you pick as a partner, and also letting love do its thing, and then preparing for a family and children in this area and city is no joke. And it's really not for the faint of heart. And people do it all kinds of ways, and I don't judge it. It's great. But we have done our whole thing a very certain way. So, but we were ready. We were really ready. And so, but every little stage is so challenging and also just so fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
But right now they're really kind of finding their own. Part of having twins is always helping them have their own identity, because
Mhm.
they both get a lot of attention in different ways. And you could say that, my son's a little more outgoing and extroverted and talkative, and my daughter's a little more thoughtful and mindful in certain ways. But you're always trying to balance the twins. And as an educator, because I'm a principal of a school and I've worked in schools for over 20 years now, I've had lots of sets of twins, and
Yeah.
you always see rivalries between them. And there's always the conversation about should they be in the same room or separate.
Okay.
And part of your wish as a father is that you want them to have their own identity and feel like their own person without just being referred to as Quinn and Naomi all the time. And
Yes.
it
Yeah.
helps that they're different genders. And it
Mhm.
also helps that, there's certain things, they're fraternal twins. So they don't look exactly alike.
Mhm.
And so all that, all that matters.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the youngest of three kids. And yeah, even like just going through school and people being like, oh, you're this person's brother. Like you are trying to form your own identity while also knowing someone has a pre-described identity for you. So I can only imagine what that's like whenever you're a twin, where it's like, oh yeah, you two must be. I always assume twins have to have similarities, which is stupid and it founded in absolutely nothing. But yeah, that makes sense.
That's so true. But yeah, it's pretty great. It's a pretty great endeavor.
It is.
Sure.
So before you were an educator, you
Yeah.
did music stuff, didn't you?
Yes, I moved to Nashville in 2001 with my brother,
Mm-hmm.
Will Holland, and he and I had a band and had different iterations of the same band, and had a record deal for a while and had that whole story. And
Yeah, yeah.
played music with him, and then I got really sick at a certain point. I have a condition called Crohn's disease.
Oh, okay.
And
Yep.
so without insurance and without all that, I really struggled throughout my mid-20s to kind of get a hold of that. And it eventually, I don't know what, I mean, everybody pontificates about what happened to their music career, and I can
Mm-hmm.
blame it on a lot of things, but it's just the way of the world. It's just the way life goes, whether you've seized it with all your might or not. But I got really sick and still played when I could and played with people when I could. But yeah, we had a band called the Lonely Hearts, and I played with a fella named John Davis for a really long time, who was the singer for Superdrag.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he went kind of and did his solo stuff for a while, and now he kind of does a blend of all kinds of stuff. And we played together, and then he and I and a few other guys had a band for a couple of years called the Lees of Memory, and then played with a variety of people around Nashville. But yeah, you know, got the thing I learned is that like touring or even like trying to have a band and sustain it, you always like come off the road, and if you're doing well, you don't have to work. But most of us didn't have that
Yep.
luxury,
Yep.
so everybody looks for jobs between tours or gigs or whatever it is. And I just always liked an early morning, and always liked a structured kind of job. And a lot of guys would park cars and wait tables and stuff like that. And I didn't gravitate to that towards that. My mom was a teacher. My grandmother was a teacher. Not a lot of people on that side of my family went to college, and they did and taught my whole childhood. So mom really pushed us to work in schools or to find jobs as a TA or whatever it was. And so I worked in schools off and on throughout my music kind of career phase or whatever you call that. And I found a love for getting up early and going to school in the community of school and helping kids learn. And I worked as a substitute teacher and a TA for years in between musical endeavors, and eventually went back to college and taught special education. And I just loved working with kids with disabilities, disenfranchised populations, and populations that were challenging. And I often say populations that are forgotten, and not easily heralded. So I really found a love for that work. I also am easily bored, I've learned. And
Okay.
so there was the thing I missed most, and maybe still do, about music and that whole world wasn't so much the creating of music and playing and recording, even though I loved that. But I loved the traveling. I loved meeting new people. I loved the camaraderie between other bands. I loved waking up in new cities and all that kind of stuff. So there was an energy to that life and an energy to the music and art life that I always, if I had to kind of narrow it down, I loved the collaboration and I loved the community of it all, and kind of this shared joy for this thing that even if you and I meet in a random city across the country and I'm opening for you, nothing really seems to bond us initially, except for we're both here for the same reason, right? So I loved that really kind of wild spirit thread of music. And when I started working in schools, I've sensed a really similar thing, which is like everybody is showing up to this building every day with this intention of something really cool happening, which is learning, which is student and kids learning. And you can get really mired, and people still do, in like all the politics of education or the standardization of education or what the perfect school and modality is for your child, or where the money goes and all that stuff. But I think very little about that, truthfully, and I'm pretty entrenched in it at this point of my life. It's become the work of my life.
Mm-hmm.
But what I still love is this really pure idea that, like, I wake up, I get ready, my kids now get ready, and we go to school. And at school, people get dropped off, and people are dropping off, and people are clocking in. And we go into this classroom, this sacred kind of space, and with this intention and expectation for something to happen, which is learning, which is a lifelong pursuit, really. And if you have the right kind of curiosity about it, it never ends, and that, and that's that's a Buddha mindset, right? The beginner's mind,
Mhm.
that I'm always starting over and I'm always starting at ground zero. And the more I know, the less I really know. And the more curious and hungry I am, and the more open I am, the greater and richer my life becomes and everybody around me. So education in that regard is a really wild thing, you know? And so I did the special ed work for a few years as a teacher, and I did gifted education too at a middle and high school, and I was ready to go back to grad school. I didn't know what it looked like. We didn't have kids yet. And I was curious about counseling, and I really wanted to study counseling. And I kind of thought about leadership and had mentors push me towards the leadership corner, but I never had the ambition to be a principal or to be a leader in that
Mhm.
traditional or that status or that title. But I went to a couple of interest meetings and ended up going to Lipscomb, and they had a cohort that was starting that was all geared around growing leaders, and they had a fellowship that I got accepted into. And it was very hands-on in the learning experience in graduate school. And I immediately found a job as an assistant principal. And a couple of years in, I realized my favorite thing about the work was working with the toughest kids who got sent to the office. That was always my
Mhm.
favorite part of the day. Whereas a lot of people, that's not their favorite part of the day. And working with parents who are upset and families who are upset, and then supporting programs in the school like the special education population and all those, again, like kind of the programs and the part of the work that you don't always see like in the newspaper necessarily, or read about when you read about what's going well in schools. And then around the same time, a job opened up for an alternative school director, and that's where I am now. And I've been there for 7 years. And we work with students who are suspended and incarcerated.
Mhm.
And so, again, like a population that on its surface looks or sounds challenging, and when you do the work and dig into it, it's, you know, it's not near as scary or hard as people think. It's actually, there's a lot of joy there, and there's a lot of love there, and there's so much opportunity to work with some really amazing people and kids and families and see some cool things happen, you know. So that's been my work, and it's been good. It's been a big shift from what I thought. I kind of had this mantra for a while that people move to a place like Nashville or LA or New York, not just to be a famous rock star, but to like kind of change their life. And I think my life was totally changed by moving here. I met an amazing woman who's my wife. I've had children, have a great job. And so you kind of end up creating this whole life that you never expected, and that looks wildly different from where you started, you know? But
Yeah.
it's kind of fun in that way, to, if you can find joy in it, you know, to go for it.
Definitely. Whenever you get involved with communities that are easily overlooked, such as people with special needs or have learning disabilities, you can find like so much like resiliency and so much heart to people that get overlooked. And I feel like once you realize how that is, then it's really hard to not get more involved, not care more, and not figure out everything you can do to lift those people up. Because it's very sadly in any society, it's very easy to overlook people. And
Yeah,
once you see the heart of people, it is kind of your responsibility then to continue to lift them up and not unsee them ever again.
that's right. Isn't that true?
How's everything you just said makes me feel like you must have a very strong belief in humanity or in like the human spirit. Like at its core, you have a belief that like humans are here for a purpose and like love is a big part of that.
You can't be raised in the South unscathed by religion, right? So
Yep,
I think
yep.
we all kind of have our faith backgrounds, or what I've come to understand are traditions, faith traditions, rather than just pure dogma. And I think if I were, you know, raised in other parts of the world, I'd have a different faith tradition and a different culture in that sense. So I used to blame it all on religion, and I really don't now. But I remember we were raised in Southern Baptist churches in Texas, is where I'm from. And I was the kind of kid who I was so scared of sin and doing things wrong that I'd tried to stay really far away from experimenting with anything that would get me in trouble. And so I had a lot of
Hmm.
fear, I think, really, that the religion I was raised in caused a lot of fear, which kept me safe. Conservatism and religious fear is not always a bad thing, because it does, the good side of the coin for me is that it kept me safe. But I also spent hours and hours and hours and days in church. And so I was good at church as a kid. And then I remember going when it was time for college or whatever the next thing was, I went to a Baptist college in the area I grew up in to study the Bible more and ministry more. And immediately I was like, this is not what I'm supposed to do. Just because you're good at church doesn't mean you should be, this should be your job. And there was a Bible teacher that I had who, and it was not Sunday school. Like I thought I was going to go to like Sunday school 2.0, and it wasn't that. But I remember a verse from Paul. I can't quote you where it was from, but one of the things he said that I learned as an 18-year-old out of the house was this verse that said that the faith he had wasn't something that man gave him, but was revealed to him by the Spirit of God. And I thought, that's not my story. My story is that I essentially was given something and told it had to be a certain way and told that there was a magic prayer that you had to pray to stay out of hell. And that your next job after you do that is to proselytize and great commission everybody you come in contact with, and that non-believers were enemies that you had to win onto your side. And it was a very us versus them narrow view of ultimately what capital G, little g God was or is. So when I read that, I thought, man, if I'm going to have a faith system, it really needs to be something that has been revealed or given to me, not just handed to me from another mortal, right? So then we moved to Nashville, and I was like, okay, enough of this. My brother and I moved to Nashville to make art or music, and I remember I still had a pretty rich prayer life. I would say my prayer life's richer than ever now, but it looks very different than it did back then. And it wasn't something I had to like force myself to practice as much. But one of my kind of unspoken prayers was I'd really like to hang around people who aren't Christians. What a novel idea, right? And quickly learned by being in a city and also traveling and finally going overseas a few times that there was all kinds of beauty in all kinds of places, and that there really is no enemy, that there is no satanic force that I'm having to battle against, in the traditional way of like the little red guy who's the enemy and, all that. So it's really influenced the way I think about the political landscape and all the other landscapes where we live in. Again, still living in the South and understanding the South. So the Southern way of thinking and myself as a white, cisgendered male American. So it's like I carry all those kind of things with me. But what is the most powerful thing is two things. One is that we're all united by suffering, which is not something we talk a lot about in Western faith systems. And that it is a really beautiful process that we shouldn't avoid, but we should experience and submit to and learn from. And then two, that the greatest thing in the world is love, and that there's nothing greater than that, and that it shows up in all kinds of places and it never looks or smells like we think it is. And you can't really put it in a box or give it a name because it's bigger than all the boxes and all the names. And if God or Jesus or anything else is a good name and version of it or a face of it, then there's nothing bad about that, and there's nothing wrong with subscribing to a tradition as long as it doesn't hurt anybody, and as long as it's not exclusive, because there's nothing exclusive about God. But I was taught a good part of my life that it was very exclusive. So going anchoring back to being a father, like that's something we're all going to screw up our kids one way or another. They're all going to sit in therapy and talk about something about us. And you try to minimize that. But also that's another thing I'm in the practice of letting go of, which is I want my kids to have as little influence from me as possible in the way they think. But I also know I've got it. Part of my job is safety and keeping them safe and guard railing a little bit against, against some of those things that could really be toxic and hurtful. So I don't want them to be hurt. And I also want them to really explore the world and their own outer and inner landscapes and really embrace it, and it to be a joyful pursuit and not a pursuit that I'm making them do or that we're making them do. So, but yeah, so like get back to that idea of pastorship or whatever. When I was younger, like I kind of set out to maybe be a pastor, and then I thought that's not it. And then I set out to be like this musician, rock and roll guy, and I'm like, that's not it. And now in a way, I'm doing a lot of both of those things where it's
Yeah.
like every day you come to school and you work with students and you work with adults, you're really trying to create an experience or curate an experience like a show or like an album that feels good and that's exciting and that's pleasant, and nurturing. And then also, I mean, I think I pastor people all the time just in the way we love and care for each other. So, and that is a great thing to do, but also to teach others to do, you know?
Yeah.
So,
I think just to comment on what you said there was, I think it's fascinating because like you want your kids to have their own identity, their own life, and their own inner world. Because I think your inner world and being comfortable with it is one of the most important things you can do. But also, how you act is what your kids think normal is. So, like, how do you teach your child to detach? Like, I am who I am. You need to be who you are. You love some of my traits and all of that, but like, I care more about you developing who you are than I don't want you to be a replica of me. I want you like because there doesn't need to be more than one of whatever this is.
yeah.
But
No, please.
it's this really interesting battle of like even I have three kids, so a 9-year-old, 7-year-old daughter, and a 3-year-old son, and like I will never ever ever use a phrase to one of my kids. You need to be more like your sibling. I will never ever ever say that phrase because that everything about that just makes me feel like an awful person and father. So you're trying to teach your kid how to be like, all right, be you. And they're like, but who am I? And I'm like, I can't define that for you, but don't act like the other people, act like who you are. And let's figure out who you are, even though you're only 7 or 9 and your identity and brain are very not as developed as they can be. So it's a fascinating journey to try to teach your kid to be them, but not be you, but also, they're going to be like you because they are your DNA strands and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, and working in schools since, I mean, really 2001, I've worked with thousands of kids
Yeah.
and seen hundreds of family dynamics and how, and set in really difficult meetings with people, you know, and seeing the conflict between all the influences in the room, which conflict, I studied that in college too. And it most often conflict starts with the clash of values. If you can identify your values and understand your values, and I can understand yours, then we can mitigate and manage our conflict better, not resolve it. Cause I've learned the goal isn't to resolve it. The goal is to
Hmm.
manage it and understand it. Right.
Yeah.
But some of the saddest moments I've seen working with children over the years, families, is the very thing you're talking about, which is why can't you, and even the lines about like representing the family name can be really harmful
Hmm.
because the child didn't ask for the family name. They didn't ask to be born. They didn't ask for
Yep.
the first name for that matter. So they're
Yep.
born into this thing. And the parents or the people who have the kids, if they expect them to live up to the family name or live up to the ideology or do things a certain way or be super masculine, as a boy, or play sports or fight back when someone fights you versus handling it this other way. You see so many disappointed parents, and I don't want that for myself and my children. And again, I think part of our structure and how we've structured being parents, my wife and I, has just been to keep things as small as possible sometimes with our family and really
Mhm.
limit influences, um, through everything from screens to people and to friends and all that. And not to cut anybody out, but to say like the influences that we give our kids really matter. And one of our jobs is to guide and protect that. But also, even for myself, like if I've got a toxic way of dealing or thinking or coping, I've got to be careful not to teach that to my kids. We just had a really big reveal in the Holland family the other day.
Okay. What is it?
Well, we've never taught our kids that there's a Santa Claus or an Easter Bunny.
Oh,
And so the way we've always handled that is that when it's come up, we all we always say, well, that's what some people believe. And we give
yeah.
all these
Yeah.
vague answers about things. Now, we also like play into the thing they want to do, but they're 8. And just the other day, my daughter came home and it was around Easter. And they've asked us this recently. Is there a Santa Claus? Is there an Easter Bunny? We're like, well, some people believe there are. Well, my friend at school says there's no Santa Claus and the parents do it. Well, that's what some kids believe. So we've just said, what do you
Yep.
believe? And we'll
Yep.
always say, well, we believe in the magic of Christmas, or we believe,
Yeah. The
in
spirit of it.
the spirit of love, and Christmas
Yeah.
is, and we'll be so vague about it. And my daughter looked my wife in the eye, and I wasn't there. I was gone for the night for some reason. And she said, I want to know if there's an Easter Bunny or not, and I want you to tell me the truth. So, yeah. And so Kat goes, there's not an Easter bunny. And she goes, what? And so it was devastating. So then she starts uncovering the whole thing's a lie, like the tooth fairy and Santa Claus. And so you guys did all that. And so that she starts unraveling it. And she's like, we got to tell Quinn. And Kat's like, well, let's talk to Dad and so we sit Quinn down, and Naomi calls a family meeting, and she says, Quinn, we need to talk to you about something. And Quinn's like, what is it? And they look at me, and I go, well, Quinn, we were talking about the Easter Bunny and Santa, and what do you think about all that stuff? And he goes, well, I think it's all true. And he looks at my face, and he goes, oh. And then he kind of laughs, and he goes, of course it's not real. How could a guy, one night a year, load up a sleigh, there's millions of kids. He goes, of course it's not true. It's like it clicked in the moment.
Yeah.
And it kind of set Naomi at ease. She kind of went from being really devastated and her whole life's a lie. And at one point she was like, you lied to us. And I go, technically we didn't lie to y'all. She goes, no. At Christmas, there are presents that say Santa in fancy handwriting. And we were like, dang it, we did lie.
We did lie. We fibbed. It's a playful lie.
The point is, you try not to screw your kids up. Oh, and then Quinn goes, well, what about God and all that stuff? And I was like,
oh, no.
Yeah. And so even that, we're like kind of letting it organically grow into like them having an understanding of where we came from, what it all means, how it's all connected. And they go to school, and we're in community with people who have really black and white answers about that. And they have friends now who have, really black and white answers. So it's a world that we don't want to define for them. We really don't. And I do think we have a responsibility to show up and do something, and not let things there has to be some kind of boundary and some kind of safety with it. So there's the dance. There's the work at the end of that. I think in this day and where we are. So,
you know what? No one warned me about this, because my 9-year-old and 7-year-old are like private investigators who are desperate to find out that we are lying to them about the Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus, to the point where I'm almost just like, you guys are making this so not fun. Like, it's not fun. Like, they're like, we want to sleep near the Christmas tree. Oh, why is that? Well, that way when Santa comes up, we'll wake up. Because my friend said that she did this and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, you have a 3-year-old younger brother. Don't ruin this for him. Like, do you want me just to pull you aside and say, like, because they get so like hyper focused on it and wanting to know what truth is. And like, I'm 38. I don't have a lot of whimsy left in me. Like,
well, and here's one of the main things that I try to remember is this. I don't know what happens when I close my eyes and die. I have no idea. And if anybody tells you they know, they've never been there and come back, and we've never had somebody come back and report on it. So we don't actually know. But that doesn't mean I don't have faith, and I don't have belief, and I don't believe there's spirit. And I also like trying to explain Christmas to them in that moment was like, there's this metaphor for all the beautiful things about the mystery of life. And that is one thing I will evangelize to them about, is that there is magic or spirit or soul. And that is the precious thing that money will never buy. And no matter how big our house is or little it is or what job I have, is the greatest gift we can share. That's easy for us to understand. It's hard for an 8-year-old to be like, there's not a tooth for me,
Yeah.
So, well, don't worry. We'll still give you presents and all that. Yesterday, my son goes, is that the reason you told me you were texting Santa when I was 5 and then you couldn't buy me the Atari Lego that was for 18-year-olds? He's like, you aren't texting Santa. I was like, oh my God, there was a lot of lying there.
Okay, apparently.
I'm trying. I'm just trying.
It's hard. I do believe, call it a soul, call it energy. If I can teach my kids that everyone has a unique frequency or vibration to them, and that it's worth knowing and understanding, then I feel like that's the parent that I want to be. Because whenever I lose sight of that is whenever all I look for is how I'm justified and how I live, how I'm justified and how I love, how I'm justified and how I hate. And whenever I keep it not loose, but it's hard to know how to describe it, because like you aren't setting harsh guardrails for yourself, but you're just realizing like, hey, I'm gonna, how do you explain to a kid how to exist and to love with the knowledge that they're going to get hurt and you're going to get hurt? People will take advantage of you. You might take advantage of other people. Like the entire dance of all of this.
Yes.
I'm trying to summarize in 2 sentences, and I'm not going to be able to do it.
I think this is it. I think we're going to, maybe we need to end where we began with David Lynch, which is like
Yes.
David Lynch. When you watch his movies and experience the way he interpreted it all and showed it, on the surface, it looks dark and scary and weird. And when you actually hear him in interviews or read the things he writes, they're so light and beautiful and heavenly. And he's so incredibly positive. And he did a world of work outside of that realm with like transcendental meditation and all the efforts he put into his foundation. And which I think the answer is it's only learned best in story and experiential moments. And like, that's what Twin Peaks was for me, was he was trying to really show that there really kind of is evil
Mhm.
that really is very scary. But there's also a way, like his Cooper character, to live in it and investigate it and exist in it and let it overtake you sometimes, and also be the hero in your own story. So story helps and art helps. It helps with kids, and music helps, and all those things that we have to stay a part of a vibrant life of a dad is like, I want my kids to be super exposed to like good media, good
Yeah.
music, good story, and for that to explain the hard things sometimes, you know.
Yeah. I like Kurt Vonnegut a lot. And I
Yeah.
think Vonnegut at the heart of him is he believes that humans can do good things, but we keep on like, but murder, war, and all these awful things we do to each other keep getting in the way. And I very much believe, I feel like kind of overarching underlying this is like, I have to believe in people's intentions, or because if I just judge people by their actions, I'm not going to like people a lot. But if I can try to figure out what were your intentions before you acted, because if it's all like signal flow, right? Here's your sound source. Here's where I ended up. How do I figure out what your intentions you started with? Because I don't agree with where you ended, but I have to believe you started somewhere good. It just got warped along the way. Because if I lose that belief in humanity, I don't like who I'll become.
That's true. Yeah, and
But it's hard. But it's hard.
it is, and I'm so interested in conflict, and I've studied it so intently in my current job and when I was in grad school, and it's become this big centerpiece of my work. And I don't often read or quote her, but Brene Brown says it's hard to hate people up close,
Yes.
so lean into them.
Yep.
And that goes back to the philosophy you asked about earlier, which is what I tell the kids I work with is that you may have a mindset that you're a bad kid or that you're a really good kid. And I think it's either both are true or neither are true, but that we're all inherently good and belong to each other, and that we're capable of wonderful things and terrible things. And so we're all a bad choice or an angry moment or a traumatic event away from acting on something that radically changes the path of our lives. So that helps me love people way more. And it helps me care less about labels and politics and all that.
Mhm.
I care way less about that than I ever did. So that that's that's comforting.
Yeah.
It's a
I'll,
peaceful.
It is. I'll say this as I've gotten older. One thing that I've had to acknowledge within myself, I like Richard Rohr a lot. I feel like you've read some Richard Rohr,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I feel like I'm from Indiana, so very Germanic Western upbringing. And I
Yeah.
feel like as I get older, I'm trying to figure out how to more Eastern like my mind and how to let go of more things. Because Western, I feel like is very, how do I control all of my actions, do all these things, and all of Eastern practices are like, actually, we're good. So like that's the tension I feel daily is whenever I overly control things, it doesn't guarantee results. But if I overly let go, then that's I can't do that. I don't know how to do that fully yet. So I don't
Right.
know if that relates to you at all, but I
It
feel
does,
that
doesn't it? Yeah,
constant tension.
it does. And trying to like label all the things we can and
Yeah.
the culture we are ends up ultimately, even if you call it anything that sounds nice, can still come back to control and capitalizing on a thing. Whereas the Eastern mind is very different. So yeah, I'm grateful for Rory's work. He helped save me a lot in the idea of how I can love people, how I can believe, and what I can put my faith in. He and Gregory Boyle have been two really influences on
Yes.
me. You know him?
Yep.
He's written a lot of great works, and he's a Jesuit priest who runs a big gang outreach. And the way he deals with and works with the people he works with is really incredible. And it really is the essence of, if there is good news, then it's good news for everybody and nobody gets left out, right? So
Yep.
it's not good news if it's not good news for everybody.
Yep.
So, because then there's bad news. And if it's a gospel, then there's not bad news. So don't call it a gospel if there's bad news for some and good news for others. So, but yeah, those guys have been really hugely important in the world and the time we live in, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Doyle's the guy who's based out of California, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
He's based out of LA.
that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, because he talks a lot about just him getting involved with gangs, basically, right? Or like him trying to figure out how to love, how to teach gang members that they are meant for love, basically.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. It's the greatest
That's
gift.
that's a tall task, man. I respect that man a lot because that
Yeah.
I'm glad someone is here for that work because I don't think I could do that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. He says, and this is something I've had in my head a lot lately, that he says the ultimate goal is love and that the context is community and the pathway or the method towards the goal is tenderness. And that's what puts it all together. That being community plus tenderness ultimately equals love. No matter who you are, no matter what you've done, no matter where you've been. So that's something I can get behind for sure.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'll probably, in the interest of time, start wrapping the episode down. But
Great.
it is. I just want to say that it is. Thank you for being willing to do an episode because it's refreshing to.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of men are willing to discuss the fact that they believe in like love so much and like the pureness of love and what it can do to someone is not like a conversation with men I have on a regular basis.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah. So thank you for your belief in love. Basically,
Yeah.
it's just
Well,
all I
thanks
want to say.
for the invitation to talk about it.
Yeah,
I'm glad you got your hair cut by Steve.
that's right. Yeah. So Josiah, how we end every episode is we ask every guest a series of 5 questions. So, first question for your twins, did you have any backup names, like any names you almost named them?
Yeah, absolutely. We knew, okay, so once we knew we were having boy girl twins, we had talked about names and all that. We had names in mind kind of before the miscarriages that when we miscarried, I don't even know if Kat and I have talked about this, but it felt almost like names for those kids. So we didn't use those names
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
And when we knew Quinn and Naomi were coming, we wanted to name him his first name's Josiah. And so his middle name was the mystery. I didn't want to my name's Josiah Keller Holland. I did not want to name him the exact name in the spirit of what we were talking about. I was like, I don't want to put that on him his whole life. He's the second version of me. So I was like, I want him to have some identity with his name. And so we were really wrestling over the middle name. And we like family names and we like classic names, whatever that means these days. And so we really had a hard time with his middle name. And actually, this is kind of a cool story. We really liked the name Gideon. I forget the other middle names. We really liked the name Boone, but that didn't really seem to fit well. And we were pretty set on Gideon. One of our favorite bands that we collectively love is My Morning Jacket. They have a really beautiful song called Gideon. I don't know if that's where we got it or if that was just something that affirmed it. But there was actually a day where I was at work, my first job as an assistant principal, which that first year of admin work is very intense for those of us who have been through it. And there's a lot of pressure to be a really good admin and to be very present and to like do all the things because people really look to school leaders. There's a lot of pressure there, right? So in my first year was the year we found out we were pregnant. So we had Quinn and Naomi my 3rd month on the job. So my first year of being an assistant principal was my first year as a dad. And at the time, we lived about an hour away from the school I worked at. Anyways, all that to say,
Yeah.
there was a day, and I've told you about kind of our complications. And I think Catherine was around 20 weeks. And I was in the middle of like an after school meeting. And she says, something's happening. I'm going to the hospital. And I'm going to get upset talking about it. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're good.
But so I had to drop everything and get there as soon as I could. Luckily, her mom was in town. So I met him at Vanderbilt, and we thought she was having the babies really early, like at 20 weeks.
Yeah.
And it was really scary. And on the way up the stairs, I was like, Quinn. And we had talked about the name Quinn. And so I go in, and she was fine, and her mom left us. And I go, I think his name's Quinn. And she goes, yeah, his name's Quinn. It was just like this
Seriously?
moment, in this like kind of like upsetting moment.
Yeah.
Where we knew what Quinn's name was. And so that was kind of funny and also kind of affirming.
Yeah.
I don't know where we got Quinn specifically. It was a name we liked. I've had several friends with that name. My grandfather died a few years ago, and his best friend's name was Quinn. I met him at my grandfather's funeral, and I remember thinking what a great name that was. So And then, of course, there's the Bob Dylan song, Quinn the Eskimo. So lots of cool ties there. But we had some backup middle names. For Naomi, that's my grandmother's name, who she got to meet before my grandmother died, thankfully.
Yeah.
And then her middle name is May, which is my mother-in-law's middle name as well that she goes by. But we both had an aunt Nola, Nola, and we liked the name Nola a lot. So we're really torn on those two names. But we went with Naomi, and it works well. Sometimes Quinn asked me, he said, "Can I be called Josiah?" I'm like, "You can be called whatever you want. It's your names, like we've just called you Quinn because it's way less confusing for one." But yeah, so we had some names and we were really careful about that. And what a great question. There's so much behind a person's name.
There is, isn't it?
It really means a lot. It really can influence the trajectory of things.
It can.
So yeah.
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that's cool. While in the moment you're probably terrified of like, oh my God, it's going to happen again. We're going to lose the twins and everything. Tap out of that moment to be like, you know what? The universe did reveal to me that this child's name is Quinn. No matter what happens, we know that. And I'm sure in the moment it's also a good way to deal with a panic attack. You found the positive.
Yeah, totally. Hey, it's going to be all right. And we know our son's name.
Hey,
Let's go home. We're fine.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Next question. Do you have a favorite TV or movie dad?
The first person who comes to mind, do you know Daniel Tiger?
Yeah, of course.
Daniel Tiger is like what was one of our favorite shows, still is. We actually watched it yesterday morning with them, and they used to make fun of Daniel Tiger because it was such a big part of their childhood, their early years. We don't do a lot of screens in our home. We purposely don't do phones and iPads, but we have some TV time throughout the week that we do together as a family. And we've been really careful about that. We're really evangelical about that, at least to our kids, and protect and influence from them. We just don't want them to be exposed to too much too soon. And that, I think we'll go for a long time with that. But we watched PBS Kids a lot. And we often say that we were taught how to parent by Daniel Tiger's parents.
Yep.
And, our own families, of course. But we loved how tender and how wise Daniel's parents were. And I think the thing that maybe meant the most to me, I was a huge fan of Mr. Rogers and still am when I was a child. And something I've thought about is how the Daniel Striped Tiger character in Mr. Rogers grew up to be Daniel Tiger's dad, right? Like that's the tiger puppet and his family. And so in a way, one of my favorite things is seeing my friends be fathers and seeing my brothers be fathers. And it feels like an old friend who grew up and had a kid,
Yeah.
So I've kind of loved that idea of Daniel Tiger and his father's dynamic and just how, of course, it's all a cartoon and a fairy tale, but see how he does it. See how he does it with such ease. And it's like, oh, you're sick? Well,
Yeah.
And you're sick, Red.
And
they
you
always
know
have this
what?
wisdom in this song, and it's
Yeah,
like
they
I
can
love
make
that.
up a
I
very
love that.
catchy song very easily, which whenever I try to do that on the fly, my kids don't really, it doesn't
work.
land the same. Doesn't land the same. No.
But some of the best ways to handle children's problems is often with whimsy and song and also redirection.
Yep.
Instead of living in the frustrated moment with them. And that reinforces that for me. So, yep. Daniel Striped Tiger. He's my favorite TV dad, I guess.
Love it. Next question. Do you have a go-to replacement curse word? Or do you just say it?
Our children have heard us cuss more than I would love to admit.
Yes.
But we also believe we have a way of parenting that is that we want to be as honest with our kids and give them as much as we believe they can handle. And that's everything from Santa Claus to sex to, media to all of it. So I'm really good at filtering, and I always have been because I've worked in schools for over 20 years.
Yes.
And I won't speak for Catherine, cough, 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 since she's not here. But she didn't have the same experience I did working with kids frequently. But something we really try to practice in our family is really allowing a free flow of emotions. So if we're really excited, be really excited. If we're really mad or frustrated with each other, to be really frustrated and mad and express it. And it's important, I think, for us to express to them how we feel about them, as long as it's not harmful and certainly not abusive. And I think there's different ways of parenting. And one way is to try to shield children from as much of that kind of emotion in an effort to create a happy childhood. And I think you can have both. And I think we're trying to practice both. which is let's be as much of ourselves as we can be and
Mhm.
not say we like every song and not say that we like every person, but also not disparage people and embarrass people and make fun of people and hurt people. And I think that kind of answers the question with not, but I don't think we hang back. But they're both really analytical and they're both smart kids, and they're now trying to measure like is crap worse than hell, and is down is that.
Yes.
And you said we listened to you two in the car the other day, and the song "Mofo" came on, and my
Nice.
son was like, "Dad," I'm like, "It's okay." He's not saying the whole thing. So we talk about cussing and we talk about language and we talk
Yeah.
about words and expression a lot, but we really want to teach the kids to be really authentic as much as possible and to not sugarcoat feelings and to not be codependent on feelings or others' feelings, which is just all a fine dance. But so, yeah, I think authenticity is what we're yearning for. And also not being just foul mouth for the sake of being foul mouth. So
Pretty much. That's awesome. Next question. Do you have a favorite kids' toy or activity that you do with your kids?
when they were younger, we bought one of those big sets of just wooden blocks that you would see like
Yeah.
in a literal church Sunday school back in the day, and those were always super fun. We love to be outside together. We do evening and family walks as much as we can. That's one of our favorite things. I'll tell you something that we've learned our family doesn't love, and that is theme parks. We did
Okay.
Disney when they were 6, and we did Dollywood last week, and they were pretty fun experiences. But at the end of the Dollywood experience, they both were kind of miserable, and they were like, "We don't really like theme parks," and we were kind of like, "Thank God," 'cause
This is a
like
lot.
what we never hear that much complaining and that much and see that much frustration and tiredness when we're hiking around our favorite places around here, going for a family walk, or just doing some really simple things. But yeah, those are some things we love. I mean, we're together all the time.
Yeah.
One of the new fun things that Quinn and I love to do is go record shopping. He has a CD
Yeah.
player and a tape player. And so he counted up. He's always cataloging and reorganizing since he doesn't have any screens. So he's got like 150 CDs and like 50 cassette tapes, and he just loves it. And he's a collector, he'll tell you. So if he gets into a band, he wants their whole
Yeah.
catalog and all that.
Yep.
So that's been a really fun activity, and toy of sorts. But they're both into music, and Naomi got a set of roller skates the other day, so she just roller skates around the house, and
Nice.
so all that's fun, and just being with them is fun. So,
That's awesome.
all right.
All right. Last question. Moment of your kid's life you're most excited to be a part of.
Man, I think the thing I've tried to pay attention to is what's happening right now, because I've often thought, man, I can't wait till they talk, or I can't wait till they can get themselves out of bed and I don't have to get up every morning. Then you look back and go, geez, I miss getting up at 3 in the morning and holding them,
Mhm.
or feeding them, or we're at a pretty sweet spot. 8 years old is a pretty great spot, as you know, right? Like we can sleep in a little. And by that, I mean like 7 o'clock on a weekend,
Big
and
difference.
they can turn on the coffee pot and bring us a cup of coffee. I'm like, I think we're good.
You've
I
made
don't
it.
care.
You've
I
arrived.
don't care if they get married. I don't care if they have kids. I don't care if you graduate high school or move out. We actually joke a lot about them living with us forever, and they're like, okay. Mm, I mean, I think I would love to see them become themselves fully realized, whatever that means. And it also, but that kind of statement lends itself to that they're not fully realized now, and I think they are, and
Yeah, I
you have
gotcha.
no idea what the future holds. I have no idea if they'll get married or have kids, or how long they'll live, or how long I'll live. And so maybe it sounds kind of hokey and something I've said a lot, but we really try to stay anchored in the present moment because it's the most healthy and stabilizing thing we have. But we really try to be as present as possible with them. We're together all the time on purpose. It's very rare that we're not together or that we go somewhere without them, which a lot of people really look forward to the vacation away from the kids or the
Mhm.
night out without them. And I think we do just because it's always good to have a change in the routine. But we also really like taking them with us wherever we go, which is a parenting style. And I know that's a parenting style. And I never feel like, God, I can't wait to go out, with a couple of friends, or for Kat and I to get some time alone, because we find all those times as we can. And we also were older when we had kids. I was 35, she was 38, and we'll be older parents, which is fine. We're excited about every stage of it, but I want them to enjoy every stage of their life. And if that means they live in the house forever, oh well, but I don't think so. I mean, I look forward to seeing like how they develop the talents they have and putting those to use, which for right now, they're both really into music. And they're both they love going to school. And I'm just excited to see like where it goes. Like, will they be in honors classes or standard classes in high school? I don't know.
Yeah.
Will they go to the school that we're zoned for, or will they try another school down the road? I don't know, but I want them to be like fully realized in it and for it to really feel like them. But I certainly don't want them to do all the milestones in life if they don't want to and they don't have a passion or a vision for it. I just want them to be happy. I want them to live a good life.
I think what you're trying to say is, if we can quote Daniel Tiger, is enjoy the wow that's happening now. Is that really what you're?
Yeah. Ooh, enjoy the wow that's happening.
That's happening. Yeah, that's a Daniel Tiger song.
Man, I didn't know that one. That's
maybe
great.
maybe it's a deep cut. I'll send it to you later. Just to be certain. Yes,
I love it.
Yes, no, that's really cool.
We've gone from David Lynch to Daniel Tiger.
That's right. That's right. That's
Those
good.
are the things I care most about. So that's
Respect.
Good. I love it.
I also, my wife and I are kind of that way also. Like, it's good to have a vacation. It's good to get away. But if every single day of my life, I'm waiting for the moment in which I cannot do my day-to-day life and responsibilities, I should probably be reanalyzing my day-to-day life, not planning my next way to get away.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's good.
People need breaks. You need to mix up routine and all of that. But I'm a stay-at-home dad. If every single day I was like, how do I get away from my children? My wife should look at me and say, so you shouldn't do this job anymore. Like that's what this means is you've run your course with this role in your life. This change it up. And it's just a personal belief of mine of like, if every single day I'm hoping for something else, hey, that's going to lead to damages later.
Yeah, that's so true.
Or I think so.
Oh my gosh.
But okay, last thing for you is just, if I don't know if you want to do any self-promotion, like say your Instagram handle, anything like that. Just that's it. You got anything going on? I know you're in school life and all that, but if you want to promote Instagram handle, any way to connect with you, all that good stuff.
Well, I'll tell you that I've kind of like been interested in the past couple of years of how to do some work outside of my role. I mean, a public school administrator, you're pretty locked in. Like I could tell you where I work and all that, but I don't know that people would find it more as interesting as, a guy who's making a record or selling art. But I'll say that I've done more trainings around this kind of concept of conflict management, school culture building, team culture building. There's a body of research called restorative practices that I train on and work in. So I had done some outside of my work training, and now there's a collaborative of a few other school leaders that I've come in contact with, and we're kind of getting a consulting kind of business off the ground. It's called EdWorks Tennessee. And if you just look up EdWorks TN, you can find it. So I'm one of the kind of consultants on that. We're looking to do like professional development, but I'm interested in doing more work than just within education. And I've done some training on those topics I mentioned with nonprofits and religious groups and in some schools and other districts. So that's something I'm trying to kind of grow in and look towards in the future. It's not my main gig. My main gig is being a family man and having a pretty solid 9-to-5 job in the school I work at. And I'm really happy there. But yeah, that's something I'm kind of working on. And outside of that, that's about it. But yeah, look up EdWorks TN. And then my Instagram, I think, is Josiah Keller, my middle name. And
cool.
Nice. Reach out. If you have dad questions, I'm here for you, friends.
Respect.
Anytime.
That's right. But
well, thanks again.
But anyway, I'll let you get back to your work day. Really appreciate your time, Josiah. I'll see you next time, all right? Thank you for listening to the episode.
Make sure to follow us on Instagram at The Imperfect Dads Podcast.
And make sure to subscribe and rate us 5 stars wherever you listen to us.
The music is provided by the Wildfeathers.
And all episodes are produced and edited by me.
Make sure to tune in Mondays for new episodes.